Welcome to the podcast. I'm Rosa Coelho, your host, lifestyle entrepreneur, health coach, and speaker. I've gone from being in complete overwhelm, burning the candle at both ends, and watching my health, relationships, and business suffer, to creating a life with more joy, ease, and abundance. If you're ready to let go of the overwhelm, reclaim your health, and push past your comfort zone so that you can unleash your next level of success to create a greater impact, then sit back as we delve into conversations, as well as bring on guests to share with you tools, knowledge, and real action steps to get you there. Listen in, because you never know when you may hear something that changes everything. Hello, beautiful friend. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm thrilled to bring you this one with my good friend, Monique Guffens. This is Monique's second time on here, which is so cool. This time we're talking all about peri-menopause and exercise in particular, and we also touch on some nutrition and lifestyle factors. This is awesome. I've been wanting to have someone on to talk about this phase of life for some time now. This phase of life it typically hits around our early 40s and can last anywhere from 7 to 10 years. Now, it's different for everyone. Of course, we're all unique and different. So some women might already be in perimenopause in their late 30s, and some might not start until like their mid 40s. So it all depends on you. But either way, things do change for us as women, and there's no avoiding it. So I found that this episode was incredibly empowering in terms of some of the things that we can start to do to help us through this phase of life. So sit back, enjoy this episode. Hi, Monique. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Rosa. Exciting to be here today.
Yeah, this is so cool. Second time on. I actually thought I'd had you on more than that because we talk all the time. I'll have to, I'm sure we'll have more, like a second part to even today's topic, because today's topic is so amazing and so needed. So I'm grateful that you have the time to chat with us today.
I'm super glad that you have me on, and this is such a topic dear to our hearts that we can talk about this for hours. So we'll keep it to a minimum today.
Sounds good. You know, it's amazing where this conversation around women's health has come. Like, we're going to be talking about perimenopause and menopause. And I'm just so grateful, because I was thinking of like my mom's generation, like this wasn't even a conversation. Women just suffered. And really, it's quite a new topic. Like, I would say only in the last few years has it started to become like mainstream conversation. And I'm so grateful for it. Let's start off simple though. Let's start off with, what is the difference between perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause? Like, we use this language all the time, but it's not always clear for everyone what the definition is and what it actually means.
Yeah, great thing to start with. So let's start with the middle, menopause. And because that's kind of what we see as a buzzword online a lot, and you hear it, and maybe even your doctor has said, oh, it's just menopause. So menopause is really only one day. Which the whole phase 3 of our lives is a lot. We're up to like 30 to 40% of our life we're living during the postmenopausal states of life nowadays. So think about that. So menopause really marks the day of 12 months of you not having any cycle anymore. And then the day after, you're in postmenopause.
Wow.
Perimenopause is all of the years leading up to that 1 year of no cycle day, which comes with most of the symptoms, and they come and go a little bit, lifestyle related. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but that can be anywhere from non-recognizable days to like 10 years. Wow. So buckle up. And then postmenopause is all of the decades, right? Let's hope, post that day. So it's a longer period. It's not just a phase.
Yeah, that's interesting. So really, when people say, oh, I'm in menopause, unless you're speaking to them on that day, they're not in menopause. They're either post-menopause and they're finished with menopause, in which case, maybe they're not having so much conversation around it anymore. But then there's the perimenopause where, like you said, that's where all the symptoms and all the kind of trickier.
Even post-menopause, up to like 4 to, and again, that's an average. So there's one bit longer, but about at least 4 years, your hormones are still balancing out. So there can still be symptoms very,
Oh,
very noticeable in your day-to-day life.
okay, that's so good to know, just to have that clarity around it. I find the more we speak about this, the more clear we are, even around the terminology and what this means. It just makes women feel less alone in this journey, because this journey could be so difficult. Like the symptoms could be so erratic. And actually, I was listening to a podcast not long ago where they were saying a lot of women are given antidepressants when really they're in perimenopause or maybe in that phase just shortly after menopause. So it's such an important conversation. What are, like, speaking of symptoms, what are some of the symptoms that we know, like the hot flashes and maybe like the insomnia and that kind of thing? But what are some symptoms that aren't so spoken about, that women don't always associate with menopause or perimenopause?
Yeah. So gaining weight rapidly, but especially around your midsection. So maybe the scale is not necessarily something you keep an eye on or can balance out, but things are changing a little bit. So you're holding on to more weight around your midsection, which is a big thing. As you pointed out early on, depression, it's very, very common in this period of time that you have suffer more from that. As well as emotions, you can be much more emotional. Like think about the time that some people more have around their cycles, especially in younger years when you're in puberty, or around when you might be pregnant. Your emotions are kind of in a roller coaster, and that's another thing that obviously is triggered by hormones. So feel that. Another thing is you might be less thirsty, so you want less water, even though everyone tells you to drink more water. Even that is affected as well by your thirst. Signals aren't there as much. And then the other thing is the loss of strength. So, that's what we're going to dive into, like exercise as well, but you are losing your muscle mass. So if you're not counteracting that, you might just feel weaker in time. This is not an overnight thing, of course. It's just things that are slowly building up, and you might notice other than the hot flashes and
Right. Interesting. Now the thirst thing is really interesting. I hadn't heard that one before.
Everything's it's harder. The body has a harder time of coping with stress, and this is where depression or emotions play a role in as well. And then the cortisol hormone is something we learn and read and hear about a lot, which is a big one that starts to fluctuate in that time. And you can also call menopause a little bit of that midlife crisis, right? Because it all comes together. Like you're just not feeling yourself anymore, and then you can blame it on the kids maybe moving out or career change or things like that. But it's all the raging hormones inside of us messing things up.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, because actually during this phase of life, and actually, why don't we touch on the age? Like, when does it actually start for women?
The average age in North America is 51. But again, that's an average. And of course, we have, yes. Okay. But when it starts, as you just said, about 10 years prior. So in our 40s, definitely. So anytime over 35, that could be. But of course, sadly, there's also women that go into like medical induced menopause during like a ovarian cancer or life events like that, where the ovaries are removed. So the adrenals have no choice but picking over overnight, which obviously brings a whole stream of other body imbalances with it. But so, we're right in there, in that 40 plus age.
You touched on something interesting, was that during these years, like let's stick with 40s now, although we know it can start, like you said, as early as 35. But when you're in your 40s, going into your 50s, you're right, that's when women are really experiencing different situations in their social life, in terms of, like you said, kids moving out, aging parents. So they're looking after aging parents and all sorts of things. So maybe they are associating the way they're feeling because of these life events, as opposed to it. Yes, that will have an impact, but also that it could be more than that and not just those phases. So that's really interesting.
And sometimes they're losing their routine a little bit too, because, when you have maybe the children at home or young children at home, you're running around with them more, or maybe you're more active in your job. Maybe you get a more senior level over the years, which comes with sometimes less movement and more stress. Aging parents definitely comes with more stress, or maybe more traveling, or maybe you giving up to your day-to-day activities because your social team, it could be a soccer team or a tennis club or whatever it might be, might fall apart for many reasons as well. So many little things are happening, but then realize that actually your stress goes up while your activity goes down, which is not how we want to see it.
Oh, it's a lot to navigate. My goodness. Um, what what do you feel? Because it feels so complex and so overwhelming in some ways, in many ways. What is the first thing that someone should focus on if they're like, okay, I'm definitely in perimenopause. I need to get like a grasp of this because I don't want to feel like this all the time. Where should they start?
We love to say go back to basics, right? Like really diving into a few key things that are seem so for us, maybe so normal or so that's a great way to start, but maybe you haven't thought about that. But think about of your daily activity. And I'm not talking about going to the gym 5 days a week, doing CrossFit or,
Yeah.
Olympic levels of anything. I'm just saying like movement. How stationary are you? Are you literally going from like bed to the kitchen to the couch to your office and backwards? Like tracking your steps. And it doesn't even have to be on a ring or a watch or anything. You haven't taken any steps. You don't need a watch to tell you that, right? Did you go outside for a walk? Did you take a moment to do any type of other activity? If you have a dog, great, but did you actually walk with the dog, or was it only 10 minutes? So movement is one. Hydration, and I'm not talking about a glass of wine or coffee, because those alcohol and caffeine are toxins which are only elevating the stress level, even though in the moment it feels really good.
Yeah.
Water or herbal tea or anything in that direction. So making sure you hydrate enough and a lot. And that might be shocking to some to hear. We're really thinking about like half a gallon to a gallon, or let's do it in liters, 2 to 4 liters a day, not 2 glasses a day.
Yeah.
A lot of water. Flushing things out. So movement, water, and stress. How are you coping with stress? Are you doing any form of journaling, meditation, sitting on the porch with your cup of tea, ice bath, hot tub, right? All of the things you might want to do for you. Reading a book. So is there any you time where it's all go, go, go,
Right.
to give your body a moment to cope with stress, as well as sleep? Are you sleeping enough? How is your bedtime routine? Are you going to bed early enough to wake up early enough? Are you constantly exhausted? Then there's something has to change. You shouldn't feel constantly exhausted.
Right. And what are the consequences? Like if someone isn't, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, water, stress. I don't have to like, I can hear it already. Oh yeah, it would be great to have time to have that cup of tea, but I don't have time, or I don't have more than the 10 minutes to take the dog out for the walk. Like, what are the consequences of not rearranging your calendar to start to make these changes, these really simple changes?
Priority, right? Is it not important for you? Like
Mhm.
instead of like, I can't take it more than 10 minutes, I don't want to take more than
Yeah.
10 minutes. I can take a walk, I don't want to take a walk. Because if you say it to that to yourself, or better out loud to someone
Right.
else, doesn't it sound like, oh wait, I want to? Well, do you? Right? That's what we're coaching, trying to get out of people. But taking that extra time, doing a time audit, right? And you can be as precise of writing down for a week long or a day long, every 15 minutes, what you're doing.
Right.
And are they all priorities? Like how long are you scrolling on social media, right? If that's an hour a day, it sounds like a lot, but it's not. We all do it.
Yeah.
That hour could be spent elsewhere. Or how important is that Netflix show? Maybe it is, right? Because it's a family time thing. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying all these things are wrong, but where can you improve time? There's always ways. You just have to really be honest to yourself.
And is that because the consequences of not doing this are going to make the symptoms worse? Like why would you say to a woman like, okay, it's really like you need to take this seriously. I know it sounds really simple. I know like it's just hydration, it's just this, but like why would you say that they really need to make this a priority? Like take this seriously and not just like another thing to do for 6 weeks or whatever it is.
I think prevention, right? Knowing that so many bad disease or illness born start with not coping with stress properly, not eating properly, like a lot of processed foods and sodium and sugars, they brew things within our body. So it's your own health. Like, do you want to be around for a long time for your friends and your children and yourself, or not? If you don't, if you see the inches adding on over the years, if you don't stop that, that means you have a lot of problems with your organs down the road, because we're not supposed to be super overweight, right? Like, and bone density and like things like osteoporosis happen when we don't look after our body. Diseases, heart diseases, like diabetes, insulin resistance, like our body is going to have a harder time fighting it by ourselves. So if we want to live a healthy life, we have to start yesterday with
Yeah.
small things, not next week, not next year, or not when it's never too late, but it's getting harder and harder. And when certain illnesses are there, they're much harder to overcome than preventing them. So I think this we just have to really dive into it. Like, do you want to live a healthy, long life, or do you want to walk from doctor to doctor, from medical bill to medical bill? Like, it's up to you, but we have to do something if you're not doing all of these things, because your body needs you to look out for yourself.
I love that you touched on that, because we're at the phase of life where it's no longer about, yes, weight loss is important. If you're overweight, it's an important part of health. But I think what really shifts for us in our late 30s, 40s, 50s is that the weight loss is no longer about looking good in that swimsuit. It really is important for our health. And so doing it also in a way that is, along with the prevention of disease, is key, and not just, a crash diet to look better. Like, it's got to be so much bigger than that at our age, if we do want to live a life with vitality and energy and all the things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, do you want to survive or you want to thrive?
that's
Because
right.
your body is in, like, so many people been to so many things. And you're like, wow, how did you even do that? But your body has this survival mechanism, which is that cortisol hormone is a big part of that, right? It like, and make sure you get through things. When people say fight or flight, like you're in that stress mode all the time,
Right.
your body will survive. That's its core mechanism. But you're not thriving. You're not feeling
Right.
good. You're not even looking good. And I'm not talking, as you said, about the size of your clothing, just about your eyes and your skin
Mhm.
and your sparkling when you do things. But if we're not, it's just, it goes downhill quickly. And the body will not give up. That's the thing. I'm not hungry, I'm not thirsty, I'm not tired, or I'll sleep
Right.
later. You can do all these things, but you're not feeling good. And the thing is, sometimes we forget you always have a headache, so you don't even notice it anymore. You're always tired. That's just who I am. No,
Right.
that the new you, or the better version of you, is not always tired, is not feeling achy and pains all the time. You don't have to just live with that because you're getting older. No
Right. So
way.
are you saying, like, despite what our body is going through perimenopause and menopause, that despite all that, we can still feel really good? It's not a reason to feel terrible all the time. I'm sure there's fluctuations that we will go through, and we're going to feel those symptoms and they're not going to feel great, but it doesn't mean that has to be our everyday.
Absolutely not. No. And you also don't want to sit and wait for it to get better, because it
Right.
doesn't work. We need to take our own life back in control and back in action. And as we just already said, you haven't heard us say that you have to spend 10 hours in the kitchen a day, or,
Right.
being in a gym every day. Like, there's none of these things we're even talked about yet. We're just talking about basic things like drinking water, going to bed on time,
Yeah.
and eating mostly whole foods. We haven't even really touched on that. That's
Yeah.
not a really, really good thing.
We'll touch on nutrition next. I like that you're saying that I think until now, the idea, and if I think of like my mom and her generation, and even watching her go through it, not that we ever had conversations over it. I just saw her with the hot flashes, and all of a sudden her and her friends would, it'd be winter and they'd have their coats off. Like, but there was never a conversation around it. But it always felt like a phase of life that you were just waiting to get through it, that you just had to wait, that there was nothing that you were going to do. Yet, if this phase lasts 8, 9, 10 years or more, you don't want to be waiting for it. So
You don't
I'm
want to
really
be
glad that you
wasting
touched on
that
that.
time either. And we
Right.
both have vital moms. I think your mom's in her 80s, my mom's in her 70s, and she mentioned like, oh, it's too late for me, all these things you now learn and know.
Yeah.
But thanks
Yeah.
to our previous generation, we learned all these things because they're the ones that started to speak up for themselves. And that the medical world is diving a little bit more into research and stuff, because
Yeah.
to a few years ago there wasn't much of people out there helping us. But they're, I know your mom too, my mom, they're still working out in their way, they're still walking, they're cycling, they're doing all
Yeah.
these
It's got a
things.
great
So we definitely
lifestyle.
have some good genes there, but we want to not hope for the best. We're going to make the best of it.
Well, good genes. And also, like my mom, and I'm sure yours too, like my mom was just, I wouldn't say she's into health. Health is just her life. Like, she's always had her own garden. She's always moved. She's always lifted heavy things. She's always been active. She doesn't it's just a little bit old school. Like she doesn't think, oh, I'm being healthy. It's just the way she is. And so she's been a great role model for that. She's never been into processed foods or any of the things. So
Yeah.
in a way, it's been a great to watch her thriving in her 80s more than some
No.
people in their 50s. It's incredible. Um,
Nope.
so let's get into nutrition. When it comes to nutrition, are there some things that women need to change at this phase? Because we often hear, I haven't changed anything, but the weight is coming on. It must be my hormones. And so there's nothing I can do about it. But are there changes that women can make in this phase of life that can help to feel better, to shift some of the weight and so on?
Yeah, so as you just said, the smaller life changes, the better things will be in that particular part is like if you're not already doing any form of scheduled exercising, like starting, as you just said, lifting heavy things, starting to do some resistance work. Because resistance training, like I know you always said in your podcast too, but it's gonna give you that sense of empowerment. It's gonna make you feel badass, right? But it's important to stimulate the muscle because after that 30, 35 mark, the body does not want to keep muscle. It wants to replace it with body fat, really, not that muscle ever turns into fat. It's two different things, but the body wants to let go of lean muscle mass, which is our main energy burner in the body. So right there, you can see if you lose that energy burner or some of that, you're not changing anything else. You're automatically adding more body fat.
Yeah.
So making sure you're starting to pick up some heavy weights or some resistant bands or stepping into a gym or do some work at home, right? And I know a lot of people say, oh, let's start with body weight, but you know too, body weight is really hard.
Yeah.
Do a push-up. It's much harder for me, at least, to do a push-up than pushing a dumbbell forward, right?
Yeah.
So don't be afraid, but lifting would be really good, as well as really looking at your diet. Protein,
Yeah,
something we both really talk about, but everyone does not eat enough protein without doing a little bit of a food audit, as you call it, making sure you're eating enough protein. And I can tell you, and you know this too, if you don't focus on it, you don't eat enough protein and you don't probably eat enough fiber, which are two key things. So you want to increase your fiber, not from supplements, from real foods like fruit and vegetables and grains, and eating protein of any shape or form.
Let's talk about the protein because that's definitely the one thing that I find with women when I look at their nutrition plans is it's the protein that's lacking. So how much protein should someone be focusing on? And how can they start to introduce it if they're not used to eating that much protein or they're worried that it's too much protein?
I think if you've never tracked food or really been aware of that, trying to eat protein with every meal is already challenging. To start with that. Now, people might ask, what is protein? Obviously, you can Google this, but making sure it's real protein because nuts are fat first and then protein, right? Legumes are carbs first and then protein. So we're really talking about the main staples of protein with every meal. And if you're telling me you only eat one meal a day, that's a problem too, but that's the second point. So let's try and eat 3 meals a day, right? With protein. That is probably already doubling your protein intake.
Right.
And then if you want to take the next step further, track your food in any of the paid or free macro apps. You're just tracking your food. We're not even asking you to look at certain goals, but like thinking if that amount of protein comes anywhere near your body weight. We're not saying it has to be your body weight. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, but let's see if it's anywhere near that to start. And it probably isn't.
So give us an example, like with the numbers, give us an example. So someone listening knows like, okay, I should eat this much for my weight.
Let's say 100 grams of protein. That is for most of us a great start.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's some that want more because their goal is more towards even building more lean muscle mass or they have different like views on food. But let's start with 100 grams or 3 meals a day with that 20 to 30 grams of protein. Hey, equals almost close to 100 grams too. But let's really start there and then see how far you want, because we know not everyone wants to like dial in and track every morsel of food or have a whole meal plan lined up for the week. We would love that.
Yeah.
But I'm happy if you just do a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Most women need to be definitely over 100 grams of protein. But if you're only consuming 60, 70 grams right now, that 100 grams is such a good solid base to first get to. Like I find women kind of want to go from 0 to hero. So they want to go from like maybe 60 grams to all of a sudden needing to eat 140 grams of protein a day. But that can be so overwhelming, not only like mentally, but also physically on your body. So I like that you suggest that, like, get to that 100 grams first, get consistent with that. And then you can start to tweak it more to your actual body size.
And it's similar to the water. We just throw out some goals of like maybe that 2 to 4 liters a day, maybe 3 liters your ideal goal. But if you now knowing that you only drink 1 glass of water a day, no, it doesn't work. It's small and simple steps. They don't have to be complicated. It can just be a glass of water every few hours, a little protein, finding whatever workout works for you. And if that's at the group class or a home workout or lifting session at gym or getting a personal trainer, all these things, but start with small goals and don't put everything all at once, because we fail, because we just talked about the stress level. We don't want to increase it.
That's right. That's right. How important is fiber? You talked about protein and you mentioned fiber as well. Talk to me about fiber, because that's something that we don't often talk about because it's not one of the typical macros, right? We hear a lot protein, fats, and carbohydrates, but we don't talk about the actual like fiber and why that's so important.
Fiber has, again, if it doesn't come from a powdered version of a fake processed version, that is whole foods, right? On the next to the protein part. So that means you're eating a lot of fruit and vegetables. And the thing is, fiber is really good for detoxing the body, because the liver does that, but it needs some help here. When you're eating it, the roughage of the fiber pushes literally things from top to bottom, and we need to go to the bathroom. It's fiber, right? Right. So it brings things out. And all of our, not all, but a lot of our vitamins, things that we're not tracking, it's really hard to really see, comes from that. There's so many like benefits of that. So, and also thinking about things like, your roughest, greenest vegetables, like your kale and your spinach and all the arugula, or even if you want to take it farther, the dandelions, they're so good for our body. And we just forget about them very simply. But going to the bathroom on a regular basis, we haven't talked about that, but a lot of people think it's maybe not normal to go, to say the word poop. 3 times a day is actually normal. And then you hear from people like, oh, I go to the bathroom every other day or once a week. I'm like, there's something not right, because how is your body getting rid of body fat cells or toxin that way?
Or toxins.
Sure, you sweat some out, they go out of your skin and things like that, but your liver is doing a lot of work and needs to push this out. So making sure we have a very healthy gut microbiome is very important. And again, gut microbes get fed by fiber. So you need different types of it. Now, of course, there's people with maybe an IBS or another digestive issue and they cannot eat enough fiber. So there's reasons there, but in general, focusing on a little bit more. If you hear that people track it and maybe eat 9 or 10 grams a day, it should be 10 grams a meal, not a day.
Right. Yeah. And I find you just touched on constipation, and that tends to be one of the symptoms that so many women, the amount of women that will ask me about constipation is unreal. And I know sometimes it is the hormones fluctuating. So sometimes it's just like one of those symptoms that you'll go through a little phase where you're impacted by that. However, I find that often people aren't eating the fiber. They're not doing the things necessary in order to address that issue. But it's such an important one because you don't want to have those toxins inside of you.
100%. And not drinking enough water is what things too, right? Your body needs water to flush things out. Not moving enough is another thing. Your body loves some movement. It just really helps it. And then another thing is we just talk about you're reducing muscle. And the digestive organs are also needing muscle contractions. So pelvic floor issues is also an issue that can happen obviously during pregnancy, but also during menopause. And all of these things are muscle related. So how you see that everything kind of works together.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Another thing is we don't sleep enough, or gut microbiome has also its own circadian rhythm. So if we don't sleep consistently, because you'll talk to people with a lot of shift work and again, nothing in their lifestyle, there's things they can do, but it's harder. Your gut microbiome is off too. You might know if you're jet lagged or you didn't sleep well for whatever reason, your digestive system is different too. They all work together. So you don't sleep enough, or you're too much in that fight or flight state, so you're stressing all the time. Your body is like, there must be danger. We don't have time to go to the bathroom right now. So your digestive system kind of puts a pause. If you don't eat enough food, not getting enough energy, your body doesn't have energy to digest the food. with
Right.
constipation comes with that. And that's another thing people want to do sometimes, or women want to do in menopause when they gain that weight. Oh, let's eat less. And, that's the opposite of what we want to do, because then our digestive system doesn't work, and then our energy drops, so we don't do enough anymore, and then the body doesn't have energy. It definitely doesn't have room to feed that muscle mass, so it's going to let go of it even quicker.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love that you brought that whole approach to it, because when it comes to, and I'm just going to stay on this topic of constipation, because like I said, it just comes up a lot with women.
Yep.
And I think we need to be speaking about it a lot more, because one, you don't feel good if that's happening for you. You feel heavy. It can make you feel angry. It can make you feel lonely. It can impact your mental health. Like the list goes on. But what I often get is, what can I take? Right. And yes, we will get into some supplements. I know you're like me, we're not huge supplement pushers. There are some things that can help. However, that's not the answer to everything. Like, I love that you touched on, if you have constipation, you want to be looking at your sleep. You want to be looking at your fiber. You want to be looking at your hydration. You want to be looking at your movement. Like, it's going to be a combination of all of those things, and then getting all of those things right and consistent over time for it to actually have a positive impact, so that you're not then suffering in that way. And just simply taking a supplement isn't, it's not, we're all looking for the easy, like, what's the band-aid? What can I take so that I can go? Another interesting thing I heard is that sometimes women have the opposite, where they won't go for a few days and then they have diarrhea, and they think that's actually also a form of constipation, because what can happen is that you're blocked, and then all of a sudden whatever can get through will get through, but you haven't actually emptied fully, so you still haven't solved the problem. Like, you haven't gone to the opposite end of that scale. Like, it's still this constipation. So I really appreciate that you touched on that, so that someone can start to have an overhaul of your lifestyle, and say to yourself, okay, I need to sleep so that my digestion would work. Like, your body works as a whole. It's not just like one thing.
Love that. And as you say, what can we take? It's the same thing of like, what can we take to lose weight, or what can we take? No, you need to look at, it's a bigger picture. And sure, there's situations where we need some help, right?
Yeah.
But we don't want to start with that, because it will just be one pill after the next. And then
Yeah.
where is it going to stop? And everything always has side effects as well.
Right.
Um, and also, if your body is not can process things regularly without these medications or help things,
Yeah.
it's really hard. It's like with sleep, with melatonin. At some point, if you keep taking melatonin, your body doesn't produce melatonin anymore, because it doesn't need it, because it
Yeah.
gets it from somewhere. And then, yeah, it's a
Why don't we
downhill
just flow into, let's flow into supplements. Because I'm not anti-supplement either. I just don't see it as a first thing that you need to do. Let's talk about some supplements that can help along with the lifestyle factors.
Exactly. So we talked about, and some people might not see the supplement, but it is like protein powder. We touched about getting in enough protein. So for some, using a protein powder can really help. Does it make lives a little bit easier? They're on the go, or they're just getting into the groove of things.
Right.
It's great, but we want to minimize that, right? It's very processed. So having one protein powder product a day is great, but having 5 to hit your protein, that's not me
Right.
living on shakes and powders, not whole foods that
Yeah.
we just talked about. So that's one that can definitely help. Vitamin D, like we both live in Canada. It's really hard to get vitamin D any other way. We can't possibly eat enough food to get vitamin D. Like, I know that even like, I know this Corona beers, like the alcohol-free ones, are supplemented with vitamin D. That's not the
Are
way to
they?
get.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
it's not the way to get your
that.
vitamin D in though. Like, it's not.
Interesting.
So yeah, and you can do blood tests, but 99% of the population in North America is vitamin D deficient. So that's a good one. Vitamin B, menopause, a lot of different symptoms are affected by that. For example, it's harder to maintain and absorb vitamin B6. Vitamin B12 for a lot of the people that maybe live on a plant-based type diet, but think about energy too. If you even look at the back of any type of energy type drinks that we don't want you to take, but what can happen when we're feeling this slump and tiredness, but vitamin B complete. Obviously, I should start with this, but the best way of finding out what you're deficient on is blood work, right?
Yeah.
But then look at your own blood work. because the doctor will only mark, or the system will only flag when you're really deficient. But normal, we want to be more than normal. We're exceptional human beings. We're fabulous. We're strong.
Right.
We want to be more than just normal. So look at your own blood work and see what you can do with that, or talk to a holistic nutritionist or a doctor, anything like that. That's a little bit more outside, just like these are the numbers and this is the box we need to tick, because we're more than that. So protein powder, DEP, and then adaptogens. Again, you want to make sure.
Tell us what those are for the listener. What are
adaptogens? Are like herbs and spices that have been used for a very long time in a way of like ashwagandha is a big one people talk about, right? And it's reducing stress, and we just talked about that can be a thing. But it's also a thing that if your body's very stressed already or doesn't thrive well in these things, it can make it worse. So please always be careful with any of these things. Touch and go. You're your own guinea pig. I'm really sorry. Even if you work with a doctor or a coach, we don't know exactly how your body's going to react. And some things you're not supposed to take forever, like ashwagandha. But these are great. But I think like holy basil as well, or people might drink mushroom coffees that have a lot of adaptogens in there as well. They help the body adapting and processing things. And then another one I'm a big fan of is omega-3s. Fats. We need fats, right? We need to eat fats. Like, don't be afraid for fats, ladies. We need to eat healthy fats. Our body needs it, but it's really hard in a regular diet to get enough omega-3. We generally get more omega-6.
Right.
But we need both, because 6 is pro-inflammation. That as much as we don't want to be inflamed, we need our body to be inflaming sometimes, because it protects your body. But omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, so we need to make sure we have enough of those as well. And sometimes it's hard in our diet, so supplementing with that can be great. Taking omega-3s as well. So that would kind of be the basic ones I recommend. But then it's base to base, person base to base, like what they might need or benefit.
I love that. And I think the important thing is, because again, I get this a lot with people that I communicate with day to day, like, Rosa, what can I take? I feel like I'm low energy, or I feel like I'm low iron, I feel like I'm low this, and they just want me to tell them that supplement to take. And I'm like, I'm always very hesitant, apart from a few things that I can touch on. I'm always hesitant to recommend a lot of supplements, because you don't know the imbalances that it's causing on your body. And if you're not in tune with your body, like if you're not in a super healthy state and you're not in tune with it, you don't necessarily know what they're doing for you. So some things I totally agree with you. Vitamin D is one that I feel good recommending to people. However, you should still get a vitamin D test done. I like to do one at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season. And I'll never forget, one year we kind of had an early summer. There was a heat wave, and I absorb from the sun like really, really well. My naturopath actually called me at home. I had just done the vitamin D test at the end of the season, and she goes, "Get off your vitamin D right now." Because I was going over, I was just had too much vitamin D. And so we have to be very careful with that. The only one I would say that I also like to recommend is a magnesium. But you need to research and see the different types of magnesiums that are out there for whatever you need it for. Is it for sleep, or is it for constipation? Which one do you want to take? And again, I don't know, like I said, I think it's really important to work with a naturopath or a holistic nutritionist, where they can do the testing for you. They can read the testing for you. And I know it can be a little bit of an investment, but it's an investment well worth it. We're investing in our health, or we're investing in trying to get better. And I'd rather invest in staying healthy the long run. But it's the guessing part that makes me nervous for people, because you can really throw things off just by taking random vitamins, or you heard that this is good for this, and all of a sudden you're taking it every day, and you just don't know. You don't know.
So as we talked about a nutrition audit, maybe for everyone listening right now, like have a look at what the supplements are you taking, and remember why you're taking them. Because so many we bought because we saw it online, right? And this person advertising, this looks like amazing and so happy and so perfect. So it must be that one thing, or that one green drink, or whatever it might be. And it might be exactly what you need, but maybe not. So have a look in all of your investment and see if you can save some money on these supplements and putting it to work, like as you said, like a blood test or something. So you actually know what you want to spend the money on, and then make that decision, where the budget is, like what is worth it for me right now? Is it the new
Yeah.
leggings, or it's feeling this way? And maybe the
Right.
new leggings is what you need right now, right?
Right.
Not the extra pills.
Yeah, and if you take your lifestyle, you start to implement these lifestyle changes, you start to feel better. Then when you go to see someone and maybe you are deficient somewhere and taking something can really give you a boost and can really help you, at least it's not fighting against the lifestyle changes. Like you've already done that. You know that it's not because you're not sleeping. You know it's not because you're eating processed foods. You know that actually, you know what, I need a little help in this area. And there are professionals and people that are so good at the testing and understanding what you need specifically for you.
And I think the moment they have this long laundry list of things you need to take, and coincidentally they all have them right there for you,
Yeah.
run.
Yeah, that is something to touch on. And I think that's kind of what sometimes will put people off going to professionals, is that they are worried. Like I have heard people say, and I've been with a few naturopaths because I've had that too, where the list of supplements was so long and so overwhelming and so expensive. To be honest, I was going through mold toxicity, which is why I was dealing with that. But don't be afraid to move from one provider to the next until you find someone that you really feel they understand you. But that's with anything, with any profession. Some people have wonderful medical family doctors and some people don't, right? It's with anything, whether we're talking about like your average medical doctor or an a holistic nutritionist. Where whatever you're doing for your health, you need to listen to that gut feeling, go to someone where you feel like you're being heard and that you're not afraid to speak out in a way that you can convey how you're feeling as well. Because if you're feeling intimidated, that's not a good sign either. But I do think it's a wonderful thing to do at least a couple times in your life.
Yeah, and as we already said earlier, like if you go to a health professional and they say, oh, it's just your age or it's menopause or it's just because you're a
Yeah.
female, no way. Like,
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
And you know your body best, right? Like again, every test can come back normal, but we can dive into all of these things. But even if your thyroid panel comes back normal, it doesn't mean your body actually absorbed all of the things your body is making. So really, if you feel like something is off, and again, you started with the basics, you
Yeah.
focused on hydration and sleep and all these things, and it doesn't feel right, still, you have to keep digging into it. You have to keep finding people and put some investment, and you are worth the time and the effort to feel good. Like, you don't need to feel that way.
Okay, I think right there, that is like the absolute best advice I've heard, because so often I think as women, we give up so quickly. And, fight for your health. You literally need to fight for it. So if you feel like something isn't quite right, something just is a little bit off, like start to listen to that intuition and then push forward. If you're not getting the answer that you feel is the right answer, you keep going and you go to the next person until you finally find someone. When I got diagnosed with mold, I had been with a naturopath who, it was a good first step. She diagnosed me with adrenal fatigue. So that was a start. But here's the thing. Adrenal fatigue is a symptom. So even though we were trying to fix the adrenal fatigue, we weren't getting to the cause of why I had adrenal fatigue. And for me, it wasn't due to stress. It was due to my environment. So when a friend recommended her naturopath, I was slightly hesitant, but I went, and she diagnosed me with mold and everything changed. Thank goodness. Like it was such a game changer. But you sometimes have to go through the process. So don't give up. Like keep talking about it. And you know what? Have conversations. When I wasn't feeling well, I would tell everyone. And that's why my client actually recommended me her naturopath, because you have to put it out there in order for the answers to come to you. It's not going to come if you're keeping it in all the time.
And you, like how you feel, someone else might feel the same, right? And that's the thing, like we're all, if you look at people's lives, it's like all perfect and rosy and shining, right? But it's not. Everyone suffers or struggles with something. And I think, we're just coming out of December right now. It's in the darker days, it's very common, like you don't feel that energy, you don't
Right.
feel that good, and you just kind of don't want to talk about it, and it just got worse. You need to get out there, you deserve to feel good. And if
Mm,
it's any of this peri or post menopause symptoms that is, as we just talked about, goes on for years, you can't suffer in silence by yourself and just hope for better things, because it's not helping.
that's right.
Gonna
How
have to, do it.
Coming back to the perimenopause, how can someone know that their symptoms are due to being in menopause, or are there symptoms due to lifestyle choices?
Well, first off, everyone is different too. So I think we briefly touched about this before we started the podcast, but like think about your own cycle, right? Like your menstrual cycle from ever you were a teenager to later on in life is very different than the one of maybe your mom or your best friend, whoever, or maybe just the one you follow on social media that talks about it. Everyone is so different. Some people are sick for days and other people don't even know, right? Great. So wherever you fall on the spectrum, know that every single cycle, period, or story from anyone is valid. So there's not a one size fits all, like, oh, I don't have that symptom, so it must not be my lifestyle or be like a medical um, urgency to really do something about it. Same as a pregnancy, even if you had multiple children, every pregnancy most likely was different.
Yeah.
So that's the same as this peri and post-menopause, and your hormones keep fluctuating. Like really, basically, your ovaries giving the job to the adrenals. And while they're doing that, it's not a very good, smooth process for most of us. There's a lot of bumps on the road. So you can feel very different cycles and different energy levels and pains and hot flashes during that time. So it's really hard to diagnose, and also for a doctor, like exactly what it is. So knowing that it's normal to feel a certain way, but then touching into what we said it before, like your own basic lifestyle. You're a mold, right? Induced. That wasn't anyone's fault. It just kind of happened that be. But think about all of the things and toxins that we use on a daily basis. We talked about it earlier, about alcohol, cigarettes, but also like skincare products, because your skin is a very big organ. So it's absorbing all of these things we put in it. What kind of cleaning material are you using at home or get used at your job that you are, if you're working in an office or in a building for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? That's a lot of absorption as well. So really thinking, how clean is everything I eat, use, be in contact with. And I'm talking as well of toxicity from like social media, the news, like all of friends, family. Like there's a lot of different things that come your way. So trying to be in tune with your body and really being like, okay, I'm doing everything I can right now. And I'm not saying you need to be 100% perfect, because we're humans and that's not how it works.
That's not how we work.
Like I'm doing what I can here. I'm trying to go to bed on time. Oh, no, I'm going to bed on time. Stop trying, doing that. You're doing your resistance training. You're focused on what you eat. Again, 80-20 rule type thing I really like. It's not have to be perfect all the time. And drinking water. But do I drink water from a metal cup or from a plastic bottle that's been in the sun all day? Because there's a lot of chemicals coming from that as well. Like, where can I make a change? Maybe it's a different skincare product. Maybe it's a different deodorant. Like all of these things where you can start. If they all feel right and nothing has really changed, but you're still not feeling good, could it be your hormones? Get it tested.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, well, just as you're speaking, the one thing that was coming, the one thought that was coming to me was that if you're feeling these symptoms, it's also, you're not to blame. Like, I think sometimes we put so much blame on ourselves and we think, oh, I have these symptoms, I must be doing something wrong. Or like, it's not a contest to see who has the least amount of symptoms because they've done everything so perfectly, right? Again, I like what you said, is that it is a very individual. So you can be doing all the right things and you still have those symptoms. And so at least as you implement these lifestyle changes, you can start to help the symptoms to maybe not be as severe, but at least then you have clarity. You can go to your doctor or a naturopath or someone and say, look, like I'm doing my strength work or my exercising, I'm eating really clean, I'm doing really well. Yeah, I'm still feeling these things. Is there something that I can do that can help? So whether, we haven't really touched on HRT because I don't think it's our area of expertise, but can I take HRT? Are there supplements that can help me? Is there something that can help me so that I'm not suffering? Because again, we don't need to suffer, at least to an extent. I think we can't avoid all symptoms. Of course, it's not about trying to get to zero with symptoms, but being able to function in life and enjoy life and not have the symptoms rule your life is really probably the goal, as opposed to getting rid of them completely.
Yeah, I think like anything, like we're always gonna have like a headache or you're gonna feel a little certain way. But if you don't sleep because of your hot flashes, it's a problem. Or you have so much insomnia, you just don't sleep. We just
Yeah.
talked about it. Sleep is like a core thing. Like your digestion is off, your stress is off,
Yeah.
your insulin in your body reacts differently as well. So there's so many things that we need to make sure we can sleep, and we need to make sure we can move. Like if every step is hurting for whatever reason, there's something wrong. Like very simple things, maybe for some, but if you can't do one of these things, it really impacts everything. So you want to focus on that, but you don't need to be feeling fabulous and cheerful every day, because that's not how it works. We have ups and downs, but and we don't want to rely on motivation as well. Like you just have to go through the hard things sometimes. You got to have to do things, and also I'm in menopause or I'm in perimenopause, or the same thing when you were pregnant, you didn't just for 9 months lay in bed, right? You did things. So sometimes you gotta have to face hard things. You gotta get uncomfortable to feel better, and you gotta make changes, because not changing anything while we're getting older and things are changing is the biggest problem. You need to make changes. Think about, I was about you, but when I was 20, I was doing things that if I would do them right now, even one day,
Yes.
no, it doesn't work. You
Yeah.
skip nights, you didn't eat, you had vodka for breakfast. It worked. It doesn't work anymore. Now we're 40, right? And when we're 60, probably doesn't work what happened when we're doing right now. So you need to change. You need to research. You need to listen to your body. And one thing we know for sure, aging can be gracefully, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
So you have to make changes, and you don't have to make them on your own. There's so many like different coaches out there that are happy to help you, but you still have to do the hard work,
Yeah, I
right?
love
You need
that.
to
And I
do the
think there's
work.
like a positive, we can so focus on the negative side of this, the like aging feels so negative and perimenopause feels so
No, it's
negative,
good.
but it's actually can be such an empowering phase of life. It's a time where start speaking, start connecting. And you know what? It's interesting, but connection is actually, they're starting to say that it's more important than nutrition. It's more important than exercise. It's more important than anything. And I think so often we suffer in silence, but actually the suffering in some ways can be a way to connect with other people. We're in a phase of life where it is empowering. We have access to so many things. Like it could be like the phase where you're like, this is it. Like I finally have learned to say no, right? Because that's something that comes with age. I finally feel pretty good about putting up those boundaries that used to feel really hard. I don't let people walk all over me anymore. Like there's all these amazing things that come with aging. And I think that's such an important part to focus on as well, as opposed to, oh, it's like so doom and gloom and it's so hard for women and this and that. Like it's so easy to go down that. But actually, this could be a real phase of life for incredible growth and joy and connection and happiness. But you have to work at that too. You have to put yourself out of your comfort zone. But it's possible, and it could be one of the best phases of life.
Yeah, I love that. How you say that. You're so right. Like this is the time to shine. This is time to prove things. Like for yourself, not saying for others, but like making some really clear decisions about your life. Like this is suits me. These are my goals, and this is not. And that could be, sadly, that could be people, it could be food, it could be certain lifestyles, but it's just moving on. And you said earlier, like a pill or HRT does not always is the answer. HRT, hormone replacement, it doesn't replace nothing. We need to move away. Like our ovaries no longer do things. We need different
Right.
hormones. Like that's just how the body's working. So now we need to possibly fix that imbalance a little bit with a doctor. But like everything we just said, like in a way of like how much protein you need to eat, or how much you need to sleep, or what HRT or how much you'll need, there is no book for that. There's no doctor that knows the answer. It's gonna be like trial and error. And during that trial and error, you need to be focused on all the other things you can control to see and only change so many things at once, because we set small steps. But also if people are like, oh, I'm going to change everything tomorrow, well, how do you even know what worked and what didn't?
Right.
So it's a very gradual process, and it's not, I'm doing this for 1 week and it didn't work. Well,
That's right. Or
sorry,
even
it's going to take a little
or
longer.
even like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or this, I'm a big fan of, I don't mind like, and I used to be kind of against them, but I don't mind things like a 30-day challenge or a 6-week program or this. I don't mind those things because those things can really actually be like a really good jump start to changing, and you can learn so much and it can give you so much guidance. But the point is to not stop when it's over, right? To use it as like a platform to help you if that's something that motivates you. There's nothing wrong with that either. I think sometimes we could be so negative towards that too. Like, oh, it's, you have to look at the whole year. You do have to look at the whole year. You do have to look at it as a lifestyle and not just like this little 6-week thing. But that's okay to do those things if you're going into it with the right mindset of like, I'm going to help this to just motivate me for a little bit until I feel motivated myself, or until, and we all go through that. Like I feel, even as a trainer and you as a trainer, I go in within a year. I don't feel motivated every single day. I have a gym buddy that I meet up for accountability as well. And I have different little 30-day challenges that I'll do to motivate me at different times of year. Like that's okay. But the key is to have a balance of all of it, like thinking of it, these little things that can help, but also knowing that they're just a bit of fun and will jumpstart you. But the bigger picture is really what's important.
Yes. I mean, I think also with those smaller challenges down the road, it could be like, a little like Whole Foods challenge, or no drinking challenge, or with around others. How do you feel during that time? Because then you also maybe realize, like, wow, how good do I feel if I sleep 8 hours a night? Right?
Yeah.
You don't know how good you can feel until you try. And again, one day is not enough. We all know that one salad's not going to change anything.
That's right.
One workout isn't going to change
Yeah.
anything, but one workout's going to be the first of many. One salad's going to be the first of many. One good night's sleep's going to be the first of many.
That.
You need to start somewhere.
I love that. Let's talk about coaching, because you are actually a certified perimenopause and menopause or postmenopause coach. What are the benefits of investing in a coach and working with a coach?
Great question. So many little steps. And where do you start? Right? Where do you start? Because everyone is different. We just threw out a few things, but maybe like we're already drinking enough water. So that's not where I need to start. Or my main problem is really this. So with a coach, you can kind of pick out a couple of habits to start on, and you can habit stack from that point onwards. And accountability, it starts early on. So even coaches, we need accountability because we're so motivated and we're so ready to go. Motivation doesn't last. It doesn't for nobody. So don't think you're any different or any failure or anything. And coaching, having a coach, you're going to roller coasters, right? Because things go great and then whatever happens out of your control and things scramble. Or the 30-day challenge is over and things fall apart. So with a coach, you have accountability. You have someone that you can bounce off ideas, also that gives you ideas, but it's a two-way street. And keep improving things from where they are today. So different ways like that. And then a coach can work with you on like meals and ingredients, and even like a little bit of supplementation, even with the set, that's not our main thing. Progressive overload in these workouts, because maybe you're starting with 2 20-minute workouts a week, but at some point you might be ready to graduate to 3 20-minute workouts, or you want to go to the gym, or you make different goals. And with a coach, you can do this gradually instead of just jumping from like Instagram to podcasts to Facebook, because you don't know, there's too much out there. So the biggest thing with a coach is you're working together. It's a teamwork. And it's also, don't think if you invest in a coach, any coach, doesn't matter what they cost, now it's done. No, then the work begins.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And you know what? When I think of a coach, I think of it so differently now. Like, of course, there's the education part of it. Like you said, you're teaching people what they need to do for them when they're ready for the next step, like where to start, all of those things. But it's also someone who believes in you before you even believe in yourself, that they can see where you're headed when you can't. Like so often I've had clients where they come in and I'm like, ooh, can't wait till you get to, like, I know where you're going to be in 3 months and 6 months and like, I'm excited for you because I know it works and I'm going to see you there, but you have no clue. You're like a baby in this phase. And that's so exciting. So to have someone know that what they've got will help you, like, it's so empowering. And sometimes, you really are the people that you spend time with. It's so true. It's very difficult to change your lifestyle and become healthy if you're surrounded around people that's not what their value is, and you want to change, but I'm telling you, they'll suck you back in every time. And so having a coach is also that person that you can go talk to them and you don't feel crazy. where with your friends, they might just like look at you glazed over when you're like, oh no, I didn't get to my protein to my protein goal today. They're gonna think you're nuts. They don't even, or they might sabotage. Oh, you don't, who cares? It's just one day, or it's just this.
Mhm.
Whereas you can go to your coach and say, you know what, I didn't hit my protein goal, and your coach might say to you, okay, well, let's look at that day. Like, where could we have prepared a little bit better so that you would have had that protein on hand? Or what do you think, was the trigger? Like, were you extra busy that day or whatever, right? They will help you and guide you through that. Whereas the people around you, they may sabotage that, and not on purpose, but it happens. And so I think those are really the empowering parts of a coach that aren't often talked about. It's so much more than just the education part of it.
Yeah. And for the education parts of it, your coach or us as coach, we keep learning too, right? So you don't have to do it because everyone has their own career path, their own things in life they have to worry about.
Yeah.
I'm going to a person because of guidance, right? And I'm also hoping that they keep up with whatever is happening in the world, because menopause, as we just talked about, the perimenopause, the postmenopause, that's not over yet.
Right.
The grounds are just broken of people even talking about it in public. Now there's a little bit of research. Now there's more and more people writing about it and doing things. So more to come on this. And we're going to keep learning more and telling you more. But another thing is with a coach, they kind of sometimes call out your bullshit. Like, I'm tired. Okay. So go to the gym and do a little lighter instead of not going, right? And it's not to disappoint your coach. We're not here to judge you. We're here to keep you going and also keep you accountable to your goals. You said you're going to go to the gym twice a week. I didn't force you to do that, right? So now I need to make sure you're doing that, and why you're not doing that, of course. But for others, sometimes it's putting you back, because we all know those that want to work out 7 days a week, and you need to do less in this phase because we just talked about your body's already so stressed out. So it's not always that you need to do more. If you're already training 7 days a week, are you even fueling enough for that? No, because you need rest. More is less in this next phase of life, but we have to balance that out, because for some, they're not doing enough yet, and others doing way too much.
Yes.
Your coach is going to look at your lifestyle, your calorie intake, your sleep habits, and work with that, because some need to be pushed and some need to be wheeled right back in, because things worked in your 20s do not work anymore. So you need to change something, but what? And this is where a coach is going to help you out what to change, and then making sure you stay accountable. So if you're not, they might just give you some tough love, or let you know a real mirror of what's actually happening. And you're like, oh, whoops.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what, Monique, like, I've known you for quite a while now, and you are one of the most like dedicated coaches I have ever met. So anyone listening, like, I don't want them to hesitate if they just want to even just have like a little chat with you to see if the coaching would be right for them. Can they get in touch with you just for that?
Oh, absolutely. You can always find me on Instagram. It's the biggest one I'm on, but also reach out to me at feelingfiercelyfabulous@gmail.com, or on my website, or I look at all of them.
I love that.
Messages or things like, I'm not that popular. It's not that I get flooded, so we'll be okay.
You are that popular. You're just not on social media all the time. But I honestly, like, and I say that with all honesty to anyone listening, because again, this podcast is really important, that I bring on people that I'm in alignment with, and that I really trust. And I know that anyone coaching with you gets treated so incredibly well. So don't hesitate to reach out. I have one last question for you, because we could keep going on forever. Of course, we always could. There's always something for us to chat about. But let's finish with my last question of the podcast. And then if there's anything else you want to add at the end of that, let's do that. So this is something I ask everyone. What is something that you've heard or read that has changed everything for you? And of course, you probably have many moments, but can you think of like one?
So hard, because there's so many things. But I would like to say, like, for me, it's really like, get in with the lifestyle change. This is not a quick fix. Whatever you try to reach, and whatever age you are right now listening, or whatever you might think is your biggest problem is right now, and it's never that simple. So what you want is not what you need. I think that'll be, because that's for coaching and in anything.
You need.
Yes. And then you can see that from like literally how you want to look your body, or what you want to eat, or what you not want to do. wanting and needing is not the same thing. And you need some help there, I think. Because we all want the path of the least resistance, and we need to start battling in a good way.
Oh, thank you so much for that. So I will have your contact details in the show notes so anyone can reach out to you. Instagram, like you said, is probably the easiest and the quickest. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with?
No, I just want everyone, after listening to this, so whatever it is, make one small attainable change in whatever you do, because none of us are perfect. Even though you have 0 symptoms and everything goes great, change one little thing and see how that makes you feel.
Love that. Thanks, Monique. Thanks so much for your time. And thanks for coming back again for the second time. That was so much fun.
Thanks, Rosa.
Thank you so much for listening in today. I know time is precious, and I'm grateful you shared yours with me. It would mean the world to me if you felt an impact, a moment of inspiration, or learned something new, if you would share it with those you care about and leave me a review on iTunes. I'd love to know what spoke to you or what you'd like to hear more of. Your sharing and leaving a review would help so much on this journey to making an impact on as many people as possible. It's worth it. I know from experience, there are moments when something we hear has the possibility of changing everything.